Greetings. My name is Alana, and I review books on this channel. So if that sounds like a fun time to you, go ahead on and kick that subscribe button. Help your girl out. And in today's video, sorry, hold on. I ate some pretzels right before I hit record because I'm gonna eat lunch right after this, and I was getting hangry, so I had to eat something. My lunch is gonna be, side note, my lunch is fitting to be popping. Fitting to. Now, fitting to, also known as fixing to, is a southern phrase that I learned now living in a southern state. It's new to my vocabulary over the past few years because I like the way it sounded. So I'm fitting to make a good wrap sandwich. It's going to have turkey and fresh mozzarella and Kalamata olives and arugula and roasted bell pepper. And I'm going to drizzle it in a balsamic vinaigrette and have some tomato soup on the side. Come at me, Martha Stewart. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing Beach Read by Emily Henry, the critically acclaimed New York Times bestseller, the contemporary romantic comedy aficionado that has become Emily Henry. I'm being a little bit facetious, and I'm gonna tell you why with this review. I am not a reader of this genre. Okay, I'm not a contemporary romance reader. It's just not a genre that I tend to gravitate towards because it's just not. I prefer, if romance is going to be in a novel, I prefer it to be, I don't care if it's a big element, but I don't want it to be the only element. And so that just focusing on these two people getting together, that's why I think I sometimes prefer historical fiction romances, because they're kind of also thrust into these really complicated times. So you have this relationship developing between two people, but you also have these turbulent times surrounding them. And I think Outlander is an excellent example of that, because Diana Gabaldon gets into some really heavy topics and themes and questions about humanity and all that other stuff. So for me, something like that is almost too light. However, I decided to venture into the world of rom-com, because our contemporary romance, because I do feel like it gets the short end of the stick. I mean, I'm the type of person that if you want to read it, read it. If you like it, you like it. I just get excited that people read. And I do think that it's often belittled because it's not always maybe the deepest, most literary fiction that's out there. And I also wanted to kind of start reading it is to see what is it, what are the questions and the tropes, the themes that romantic or contemporary romance novels tend to deal with, and why perhaps are they so popular? Why is Emily Henry in particular so popular? We'll get into that at the end. Maybe why is perhaps this not taken as seriously as a genre, maybe why it should be. Because spoiler alert, I thought this book was okay but overrated, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other books out there that are worth, it's just Emily Henry. There's always somebody out there who's doing something better. That's how my parents kept us children humble. They were like, I don't care how good you are at something, there's always going to be somebody better than you. So don't get an ego. Let's dive into this. I was definitely writing romantically about a good world where things happen for a reason, where love and human connection were all that really mattered. Beach Read by Emily Henry focuses on January Andrews, a contemporary romance author. Her father has recently passed away, and after his death, she found out that her daddy had a mistress. So Papa was a little bit of a Rolling Stone, but at least he was only a Rolling Stone with another woman. But still, wrong is wrong. And this actually shatters this idealistic view that she had of her childhood and her parents' relationship. And so when her father passes, January inherits her father's beach house that is in the Midwest of the country. I can't remember if it's Michigan or Minnesota. I want to say it's Michigan. It's one of the Great Lakes states. And he should actually share with his mistress. And over the summer, she goes to this house to hunker down and to kind of clear the house out and to get it ready to put on the market, but also it gives her a place to stay over the summer because she needs to hash out a novel because it's already overdue and she needs to get something out. And as fate would have it, her new next door neighbor is Augustus Everett, an acclaimed literary novelist. They went to college together, and one can predict, a romantic tension ensues. I'm going to go ahead on and talk about the title of this book real quick. And then I'm going to get into everything else. People have complained that there is no beach in this novel. It's called Beach Read, but there's no beach. People who live in Midwest states, actually, the Great Lakes states, actually call the Great Lakes beaches because they're huge. I mean, if you've ever seen a Great Lake, they are massive. You can't see from coast to coast of the lake. And so they are huge and they look just like beaches. It's sandy. It's people go out there. They're lighthouses. So colloquially, they live by, the characters are close to one of the Great Lakes, so there's your beach. It's not a traditional beach on an actual coast, but up to an ocean, but there you go. Colloquially, they're called beaches. Anyway, so like I said, this is the first contemporary romance I've actually ever read. Any other romance novels I've ever read or books that have romance heavily in the plot, they were historical fiction novels. This is my attempt to explore the enigma that contemporary romance is to me in particular. In Beach Read, it does seem as if Henry is trying to straddle these lines between contemporary romance and literary fiction. So a friend of mine we met on Instagram, Shaped by Stories, Diane, go follow her. We literally had a 3-hour video chat. We talked about everything under the sun, but we talked about this book. She was just like, I want to get your thoughts on it. So she had already read it. And we had a very entertaining chat about this. And I agree with Diane. We feel like Henry is making this case for the romance genre that it's really more literary than the reputation that it tends to get. And she is using her character January to shed light on the genre and why it is really so loved amongst those who read it and why perhaps it deserves more respect. It made me feel like people thought my career was a fluke, like I sneezed and a romance novel came out. January frequently states in this novel or in this book that romance, again, is not taken seriously and it's often belittled. Whatever pays the bills, right? They'd say, particularly begging me to confirm that I didn't want to write books about women or love. So I actually didn't initially mind this. I get the point that Henry is actually making. It's no one can dispute that there are certain literary genres and books that are taken more seriously than others, romance being one of them. However, this is stated so many times within the book that it became annoying. I'm the type of person, say it once or twice, no more than 3 times, and I get it. Okay? And she states it so bluntly the first couple of times that I get it. You don't need to sit here and hammer us over the head with it. Here's the thing. I'm a big fan of when an author knows how to respect the intelligence of the reader. And I'm not saying that Emily Henry does not respect the intelligence of her reader, but when something is so repetitive, it can come across as either A, you don't respect the intelligence of your reader, or you're immature. And that is how January comes across. January in this novel comes across as immature and bitter because she can't let this go. She is constantly bringing up this, how mistreated romance is and as a genre. And she is using Gus and his success as a literary fiction writer to juxtapose how romance is treated. And she assumes that Gus does not take her seriously, but she never really gives, and even though Gus actually corrects her multiple times, she just is bitter. My girl, let it go. We get it. And that's a you problem. And if somebody, I'm the type of person, if somebody just don't take it seriously, who cares? Like, keep doing you, boo boo. Like, I don't need to prove myself to people. Like, I like what I like. I'm doing what I want to do. And if you don't like it, keeps it moving. That's just me. To me, January came across as a 20 something, a very young, immature 20 something, rather than a 30 something year old who's, she just, January was annoying. Let's move on. And again, we get this thought process behind why January writes romance. And one could assume Emily Henry, and why those reasons are important. The more I worked on my love story, the less powerless I felt in the world. I may have had to ditch my plan to go to grad school and fighting teaching job, but I could still help people. I could give them something good, something funny and hopeful. And we also get this process behind why Gus writes literary fiction. He wasn't writing to save lives so much as to understand what had destroyed them. And this is where Diane and I talked about how, with this particular book, and perhaps with her other contemporary romance novels, People We Meet on Vacation and Book Lovers, don't know, I haven't read them yet, where Henry is trying to straddle those lines with her fiction. Previous to this, she was writing YA novels. In Beach Read, we do have these narrative. We do have in the narrative. Yes, we do have these two people, the progression of events that leads to them getting together. Because at the end, you know, what is wrong with a happy ending? Sometimes you need a happy ending in the midst of chaos, right? But we also have an attempt of character study in which there are conversations and dialogue about grief and childhood traumas and why January and how January and Gus navigate these issues that they're dealing and grappling with in their personal lives while they're trying to get acclimated to each other. I missed feeling that deep curiosity about people, that spark of excitement when you realize you have something in common. You have something in common for admiration when you uncovered a hidden talent or quality. So this is actually also my biggest issue with Beach Read. It comes across as if Henry is trying too hard to prove herself, that contemporary romance can be literary, and that she is trying to straddle this line. And again, I'm not saying that literary fiction and romance cannot coexist. They can, and it has done in other works of fiction. But for me, this is just not one of those books. There's something about it that still feels too shallowly done. I said what I said. These characters don't feel real to me. They feel like contrived personality types and Hallmark stereotypes. They don't feel like real people to me. Some of the dialogue between these two people is so unrealistic that I rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, no, my girl, no, don't do that. It was just a little cringy. And so I think that these characters actually needed, especially Gus, needs more fleshing out. And this is why I have several reader friends who are massive readers of romance. And they said, this is one of those books where a dual point of view would have really helped this novel. So if we had gotten into Gus's head and get his thought process on things and how he's thinking, how he's feeling, it would have been a more substantial feeling narrative. And I agree with that. I think that when you have two people getting together and learning about each other, if you're going to tell it in the first person, I think we need a bit of a dual POV, unless you're telling it in the third person omniscient. But everything is, we're in January's head the entire time. Because other than that, Gus felt incredibly flat to me. Other than him being, a literary fiction writer who's pretty acclaimed and being hot, there's nothing else about him that I actually really care about. But I think that his background is fascinating. I wish we had gotten more of that. So let's see. Where do I want to move forward? I do like that Emily Henry brought in other themes like grief and childhood traumas and processing being in your 30s and processing how life is kind of panned up for you up to that point. Cool. I was feeling it. And I also liked these behind the scenes processes of what it took for these fictional characters to put their books together. And so in a way, and a key thing that I forgot to mention in the main plot of this book is that both Gus and January have writer's block. And so they both agree in a little, I guess you say this little, what's the word? They have a challenge in which the other is going to write a novel in the other person's genre. So again, we do get this behind the scenes look of the writing process for an author. And so, yes, I feel like this was Emily Henry's attempt to make the romance novel have a little something extra in it, and to make a claim that, to make a point that the romance genre is more nuanced than people maybe allow or give it credit for being. But overall, this book in and of itself fell a bit flat for me. I found the writing style to be just okay. Nothing about her writing blew me away. It's written in a very contemporary style, which, okay, I expect it's contemporary romance. It's happening in the 21st century. But there were some sentences, there are some awkward short sentences here or there. There are certain things that if I had been her editor, I would have had her massage some of the dialogue a little bit more. I would have had her massage some of the writing here or there, some of the narration here or there, just so that it feels and reads a little bit more maturely, like this is a narrative of a 30-year-old woman, not a 20-year-old woman. But there is something also, to give credit where credit is due, something very conversational about the narration. And that makes it compulsively readable. And it also, in many ways, made it quite funny. I laughed quite a bit in this book, believe it or not. It was witty, and there are these little pop culture references that I was like, yeah, that's true. That's funny. So I appreciated that. I mean, and it actually ultimately did scratch an itch for me. So I read this, I think I read this in June. Did I read this in June? Yes, I read this book in June, and I was just in the mood for something compulsively readable, predictable, very summary, and that scratched the itch. And I enjoyed it while I read it. Even though, yes, I spent the past 18 minutes critiquing it, as I like to critique what I read. But it served its purpose. And at the time when I read it, I wanted something lighter. And so it served its purpose for me. But it wasn't necessarily memorable. Actually, it wasn't memorable. After I read it, I forgot that I had read it, and then I needed to review it. I have a stack of books on one of my bookshelves of books that need to be reviewed, and so this was in that stack, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to review that book. It didn't linger with me. It got the job done while I was reading it. But again, when I'm in the mood for something like this, I just get lost in these characters' drama and chuckle and read something that's a bit lighter. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't reread this. I also do have People We Meet on Vacation and Book Lovers on my shelves, and I purchased them, so I will reread them, and I'm going to keep them. I mean, I think that also because I plan to read more contemporary romance from other authors and kind of see how other authors write or whatever, it'll be good to have Emily Henry as a reference point to kind of go back to. But I was not blown away, and I think that the book is overrated. Now, I might read Book Lovers and People We Meet on Vacation and have completely different perspectives and think that maybe they're better books. What I liked, again, this is her first contemporary romance that she's published for adults. And then it was People We Meet on Vacation, then it was Book Lovers that came out this summer. And I hope that with any author that I read, the more that I'm reading their books, especially, this is why sometimes I do like to read authors' books in the order in which they were published and written, because you can hopefully see how they're honing their craft. And so I'm hoping to see what is Emily, how is she tweaking and continuing to hone and refine her skill. I gave this a 3 out of 5. Again, that's not bad. It's middle of the road, but there it is. I will say this book was not, when she wrote it, she didn't have the intent at first when she was writing it of it being published, and then I don't know if it was her editor or her manager, somebody was like, no, I think this would actually do pretty well. Let's try to get this published. And so it ended up being a huge hit. And let's be frank, I do work in communications. And so this book is perfectly titled to be marketed and hit the algorithms. Somebody else mentioned it in one of their reviews. She pretty much said a lot of the same stuff that I said, so we agreed. She was just saying, the book is okay. It wasn't mind-blowing, but she was like, can we talk about the marketing of this book? So what is a common search for the summer? Hot months. People going on vacation. People looking for beach reads. You type in beach read, not knowing this is a book, beach read by Emily Henry comes up. That is perfect marketing. So people complained about, there's no beach in this book. Well, you do have the Great Lakes, so there's your beach. Just colloquially, like I said earlier, that's what they call the beach. But it's titled Beach Read. This book is titled to hit algorithms. Communication and marketing at its finest. So the marketing team and the cover art, they knew what they were doing. Same with people we meet on vacation. Books to read on vacation. People we meet on vacation. There are so many words and keywords that you could hit that the algorithm and the search engines are going to give you her titles. They're going to pop up. Same with book lovers. And so once you hit one, all her other books are going to pop up. It is a marketing gold mine. That's where I'm going to leave that today. Are you a reader of contemporary romance? Have you read Beach Read? If you are a fan overall of Emily Henry, do you agree or disagree with kind of my assessments on this per book, her first foray into adult contemporary romance? Do you feel, if you've read all 3 of her contemporary romance novels, which do you think is the strongest and what do you think is the weakest of the 3 that are released thus far? She already has the cover art for the next one that's coming out next year. It's already been released, and will I buy it? Yes. Because again, even though I gave it a 3 out of a 5, I read it while I was enjoying it, and in the midst of me reading, I read some pretty heavy stuff. I mean, I like dense, depressing, twisted fiction. I really do. And even every now and then I need a break. I need a palate cleanser. And if Emily Henry is one of those palate cleansers for me, so be it. Also, if you have any other contemporary romance novels that you would recommend to me for this foray into the genre that I'm doing, please recommend them below. I have a few saved on my Amazon cart, but I'm not buying them anytime soon. I want to get through the ones that I picked up already. So yes, I'm going to wrap this up. Please leave me a comment, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram if you feel so inclined, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.